Welcome to MgoBucks. I'm Nate Lester, and that's Matt Plessinger coming over from the Columbus side. I'm from the Ann Arbor side. I think this last week was pretty. I don't know if we learned much about our teams. It felt a lot more like a practice for Ohio State and for Michigan. Ohio State playing Indiana, who's terrible, and Michigan playing No, they didn't play Maryland. Michigan played Nebraska. My gosh, it's forgettable. And
Yeah, they're
and
all
that
all
seemed
the
like
scrub
a
teams
practice.
are about the same.
Yeah, they really are.
I
And
mean, it
it's
doesn't
like
matter.
it doesn't. And like for Michigan, when I was watching, I felt like okay, they're going to use this as a practice and try and throw deep with JJ McCarthy because they've been throwing dinks and dunks this whole time. He's gone deep and connected maybe 30% of the time, which isn't good. But they kind of used it as a practice, and they were like, hey, if he has a low completion percentage, who cares? We want to beat Ohio State. And then on the Buckeye side, I kind of felt like it was the same thing. I mean, it was Indiana at home. Like, there's no stress level whatsoever. It's almost like let's just try and get out of here without any injuries. And then on both sides, we got injured a ton against those teams, didn't we?
Yeah,
Rough. So, have you heard anything about Mayan? I mean, I I
yeah,
haven't been
right.
looking very hard, but what's going on with Mayan? That's the biggest injury.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, Ryan Day never tells you exact injuries. He'll be like, "There's a lower leg injury or lower body injury." Like he's very vague. But he
Yeah.
did say um, that we're expected to have at least two out of our three top running backs between Chip Trainum, Mayan Williams, and what's his face, back by Trey Henderson back by the Maryland game. So two of the three are supposed to be available. Now I don't know if that means they're going to play or not. Um, and I'm guessing either Mayan or Trey will probably play just a little bit. Just I wouldn't if it was me. I don't know if I would even play Mayan Williams at all. Um,
No.
I mean, I heard some other people saying that they heard it was a high ankle sprain. So if that was the case, I don't know why he would play. It's not like he needs the practice. Now
No.
Trey Henderson, I think, needs more practice. He's missed a lot more time recently, so I would say he needs more practice. But
They need healing.
you also want him healed for the Michigan game, and then our backups came in and did amazing. I mean, it didn't matter who we put in there. Xavier
Who's the
Johnson,
guy? Who's the Hayden guy? I
Xavier
just saw a
Johnson.
highlight.
Oh, Hayden is a true freshman. He just came.
He
He's like number 8 on our depth chart. He just came
he
in.
was like, yeah, he looked like a ping pong ball in
Yeah,
the one play I saw. He was just bouncing around. And did you see him cut two defenders that were like they was like each defender was an inch away from him and neither one could even touch him. He just like slipped between them and then ran in for a touchdown. It was embarrassing
yeah.
for Indiana.
The reason there's a couple things I wanted to talk to at least about the Ohio State game. So going into it, I know you were saying you were concerned because everyone had the feeling that we were going to be bad because there was going to be another bad weather game, and people think that we're not good in the weather. So like we didn't lose to Michigan last year because of the weather. We lost because our defense was trash, absolute trash, and Michigan did what everyone else did against our team, and they did whatever they're good at and whatever they wanted, and that's pretty much how it went all last year. And then this year, the only bad weather game we had was against Northwestern in a crazy windstorm. So, that's not going to ever happen again. So, we were able to run, we were able to pass, we were able to do whatever we wanted with our, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth stringers. I mean, it didn't matter. But the only problem really was we're getting all these injuries. But the other good thing that I was really happy about was our right tackle was out, and they brought in Fryer, and it's the first significant playing time we've had from any of our backup linemen, and he looked really good. Like people were
Hmm.
saying that maybe he was even better than the starter. So I was like, well, I don't really care who starts as long, but they're all supposed to be, the whole line is supposed to be healthy for this week, and that's we're getting all these people back that have been injured. So I mean, that's the main thing that I've been concerned about this year is the injuries. So now we just got to hope that Henderson and Mayan are both healthy for Michigan. That's almost and if we get JSN back by the Michigan game or the playoffs, that would be unbelievable. I just want to see him play this year.
Yeah, he's turning in to be like a Bosa brother.
Yeah.
Comes in, plays one game, gets injured, and he's
Well,
out for the rest of the
he played
season.
2.5 games, I think.
Did he? That's like, so basically Bosa played more than JSN. It sounds like. And if you're JSN, so I mean this is off topic, but if you're JSN, what benefit do you get? You're already a first round pick. What benefit do you even get by coming in and playing 1 or 2 games?
Well,
that's just a business question.
You're going to potentially move down the draft board into the bottom of the first round. As you know, there's a big difference in pay between the bottom and the middle or the top of the first round. And I don't think it would take a whole lot to reassure NFL scouts, hey, I'm okay. This injury is past me. You feel free to draft me in the top 10 of the draft. And, I don't know I know that after like the top 10 or 12, it significantly drops. So it's definitely worthwhile to do what you can to bump yourself into that top 10 to 15 range where you make big money.
It's not bad. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a solid assessment. I mean, he may just want to anyway. Maybe he doesn't want to go out that way in college.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm sure he wants to win a title too. And
he's got people in his ear saying don't play. You know that's happening. I mean, I don't know who. If it's family members, friends, agent, future agent, I guess.
I don't know. See, I don't know. I don't know if the option. It
depends.
I mean, it's not like he's a running back, right? I mean, it's it's not like a position where you generally get hurt all the time. I mean, receivers don't get as many injuries as most other positions.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think of like receivers that we've had. The only one that I can ever even think of is Ted Ginn, and it happened in the national title game in its celebration. And that, that's just completely fluke. But I'm trying to think of like what other. I mean, usually receivers don't ever get hurt. So this is a pretty weird one.
Hey, well, injury-wise, on the Michigan side, we have a couple offensive linemen dinged up. We had a tight end out. Donovan Edwards after a couple carries, he got pulled, and then you saw like a temporary cast on his arm. Our best defensive end got tweaked at the end of the game, towards the end. And then I was like, well, why the heck was he in there? I wasn't thinking that at the time. But then I was like, why the heck is he in there against Nebraska? Nebraska can't do anything. So that's what's happening here. Hopefully, honestly, I hope all those guys are back for the game. I think it'd just be a lot of fun to see them all at full strength. I don't think we're going to see them all at full strength. I mean, at this point, it's a week and a half away. There's no way everyone's going to be at full strength at this point.
Yeah, and I also want to make another point that it's very hard. Like, going into it, you can say, okay, well, Indiana actually had a relatively good defense this year, especially against the run. I mean, you guys, a big running team, rushed for. I mean, you can't use the transitive property, but I mean, you guys only ran for 150 or something against Indiana. And it's not just you guys, but like they've held most teams to like 4 yards a carry or a little bit less. And then, we were running, close to 400 yards with a crazy average. So, but the thing is, you really, at least from what I've noticed the last several years, you really can't judge how a good team does against the terrible teams on their schedule versus an elite team. Just because you're really good at destroying Nebraska and Indiana doesn't mean you're going to match up well against USC or Georgia,
Yeah.
And so like we've mentioned, I think in the past, like you and I were really excited for the number 1 versus number 2 matchup, game of the century in 2006. And then both our teams got smoked in the bowl games because we were pretenders.
So
Yeah, but
and not just pretenders, just we were probably top 10 teams, just not number 1 and 2 at the time. And then we got beat.
If you're clear number 1 and number 2, and you both get smoked, obviously, we had no business being ranked that high. And so I'm a little bit concerned this year because it's really hard to judge. the only decent team that we played, and I think we can both agree that Penn State's a good team. Penn State's, I mean, Auburn is not the best, but they smoked Auburn, and Auburn's, they're bottom of the road SEC team this year, which is kind of strange, but I think Penn State beat them worse than anyone else in the SEC this year.
Yeah, transitive property. It's
but I
usually
mean,
garbage.
that's all we
It's
have.
usually
That's all we have.
garbage. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can learn some things about
But they,
individuals.
they've had a lot of big blowouts too this year. I mean, they've looked good in a lot of their games.
Well, case in point, last year, Michigan beat Rutgers by a touchdown. It was like 20-13,
Yeah.
and I think the Buckeyes destroyed Rutgers probably by like 8 touchdowns, and then
Yeah.
Michigan State, Michigan lost to Michigan State. Well, there's
yeah. Yeah, that's why it's hard to judge because of that. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, what else are we going to look at? So, we're really good at blowing out these crappy teams in the Big Ten, and we think Penn State is pretty good, maybe, but we don't really know because we haven't really played anyway. We played Notre Dame earlier in the year, and they aren't very, they're ranked, but they're, I still think average, at least on offense. Their offense is horrible. So I mean, we haven't faced an elite. Neither of us have faced an elite passing offense yet. So that's the concern. How is our defense really going to hold up against a Tennessee who can pass like crazy, or a Georgia who just seem to be really efficient on offense, even though they don't have a ton of playmakers outside of their tight end?
They're good at everything. Georgia's good at everything. For a while anyway, in the beginning, there was only Georgia and Michigan were the 2 teams in the country ranked in the top 10 for offense, defense, and special teams. I don't know if Michigan's still in that. Probably not. But I'll bet Georgia probably might still be. And that's just amazing.
Actually, that's the other big X factor that I'm concerned about. So our punter and our field goal kicker are really good, but our kick return has been a little iffy, or is it punt return?
Kick return and coverage, honestly.
Yeah.
I've noticed coverage is a little iffy.
We had 3 fumbles in this last game, and we lost one of them. And so, like one of the 2 scores that they had was a fumble on the kicker punt return. That they, he fumbled it on like the 10 or something.
Ridiculous.
But it was a backup guy, so they didn't want to put our starting receiver back in there and risk an injury. And then this nobody guy I haven't even heard of, and he fumbles it like 2 times.
Yeah, well, something you said just a second ago. We have no idea how good the defenses are. I mean, I think we're fairly confident that Michigan has an awesome rushing offense. Ohio State has an elite, if not the best in the country, passing offense. But our defenses, we've played nobody. I mean, even Penn State is probably the best team we've played, right, defensively, and Iowa. But Iowa doesn't count because they can't play any offense. They get demoralized and they can't feed off each other. Penn State is probably the best team we've played overall, and that doesn't tell us anything. Michigan smoked Penn State. I mean, they even had good passing numbers against Penn State. So yeah, definitely. So we've kind of worked that to death. Let's ask a question real quick. So on the screen for us commenters, will the Heisman be decided in Columbus, depending whoever wins, whichever team wins, Michigan or Ohio State? Is that a true statement?
It's looking more that way now because of Max Duggan, Diego, his favorite player now. He had a pretty pedestrian game, although TCU is still undefeated, so he's still technically a dark horse. And then I think it's basically going to come down to, what kind of crazy numbers Hendon Hooker is going to put up at Tennessee. And I don't think Caleb Williams has much of a chance unless he just absolutely blows up over the next few weeks. But the thing is, voters are so fickle, they're going to just forget. As long as the numbers are relatively close, they're just going to look at what happens the last 2 weeks of the year, right? I believe it's decided after the championship games, right?
It is, and here's the thing.
So
right now, who are the top 3 right now? There, CJ Stroud is number 1.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker's number 2. And Corum. So Stroud and Corum play in the biggest of all big games coming up in a week and a half. And so that's that they're going to have a chance for a supreme Heisman moment. I feel like whoever wins that game, their big player, whether it's Corum or whether it's Stroud, that person's going to win the Heisman, because then, like you said, the next game is also an opportunity to show off in the championship game, the Big Ten championship, against who? Purdue or Illinois, or who knows who's going to win the West.
I just hope it's not Iowa again, because
could be Iowa.
They're just gonna
It could be Iowa.
They look bad.
How is that possible? It could be Iowa. It's just insane.
Or Purdue, like, who knows?
But they get a chance to play. It's usually the Heisman. It's when they don't get a chance to play in that championship game, is voters and people, the public, who just forget about them.
Do you think that they should wait until after the playoffs to determine it?
Yes and no. Because of that reason, if you wait until the playoffs, then your vote could be it could be completely misconstrued based on someone who plays in the playoffs.
Well,
I mean,
is that fair?
Not necessarily, because it's the full season, right? But the rest of the teams in the entire NCAA do not get to play in the playoffs. It's only 4 teams, and so now, granted, they don't get to play in the championship game either. But they, I think there's a case to be made. I just feel like if you did that, the winner would always be on the national championship team, and how could it not be?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, for instance, like Zeke Elliott, when we won the national title, his stats were pretty good going into the playoffs, but he had like 550 yards those last 2 games or something. So, he would have definitely been potentially winning that year had they counted the stats during the playoffs. And I do think it's kind of unfair. So, like, everyone's going to get a bowl game. So really, it's just going to give an advantage just the 2 teams in the title game.
It probably will. And remember, Vince Young, he needed to win the Heisman that year when he beat USC single-handedly.
Yep.
Against 2 former, I can't remember who won it that year. It was probably Reggie Bush or Matt Leinart. Can't remember.
Yeah.
But he outplayed him, and everyone was wishing they could take back their vote for the Heisman after that.
Yeah, that was one of the best games I've ever seen.
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome, and he should have won the Heisman, but he didn't. So So I don't know if you officially answered the question. Is it going to be Stroud or Corum? I mean, is that game going to decide the Heisman? The game?
I would say it's probably 80% chance that game decides it, assuming that one of those 2 actually plays well. Because, what happens if both defenses play really well? Corum is bottled up, Stroud is bottled up, and Mayan Williams is the star of the game. Or I don't know, who else do you guys have that would actually break out?
Nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say JJ McCarthy, but no.
And then I'm also going to put in a 20% chance that either Hooker or Caleb Williams explodes in the next 2 weeks. Then if that happens, they could potentially get back in it. It's just, are the voters, because right now, his stats are pretty sick. But they're all relatively close.
Yeah.
And I just think that they're going to really look at this last couple games, and Tennessee is going to be doing onside kicks and keeping Hooker in there until the last minutes of the game, throwing touchdowns. I think they had a touchdown last week in the last 30 seconds of the game.
Yeah. He's going to have to do it against bad competition. Nothing games. And he's not going to win the Heisman doing that, in my opinion. I think that, USC, what's his name, has a good shot. Caleb Williams. He has a better shot, I think, than Hendon Hooker, because he's still got a championship game to potentially go in and make a case.
We haven't heard much from him at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that Oregon's out. Okay, awesome.
So what do we think about the playoff rankings then? So we briefly talked about this before we started recording, and what do we think is going to be the ideal situation for playoff seeding? Do you want to have a close win over Ohio State? That way you're only ranked number 2, That way you get the number 4 TCU team and not getting stuck with like Tennessee, who would be potentially the harder matchup.
Hi, Sari. Isn't it past your bedtime? Good question. Yeah, I mean, there's like a gnat. There's like a gnat like flying around here. So I would just take any win over Ohio State, even if it put us at number 4, honestly, because I just want to get there. I don't want to play. I know how you feel.
I'm just thinking you prefer, though. Strategically, what do you prefer?
Strategically, I don't think we're going to be number 1 because that's kind of impossible. I don't think, unless Georgia lost.
LSU potentially beat Georgia, or what if Georgia wins by 2 or 1 point, and then Ohio State or Michigan, whoever wins by like 3 or 4 touchdowns. You don't think?
Yeah, I mean that could, but I think the voters have last year in mind, and Michigan got throttled by Georgia. I don't think they.
The other thing I think that they're going to do to take into account whether or not they want to move Georgia is they're not going to want to have a SEC matchup again, so they don't want to have
in the semifinals.
Yeah.
Yep.
They don't want to have that, so they're probably going to put it. I think for that reason they'd want to put potentially having Georgia, at 2 to avoid that matchup.
Yeah.
If there's any way that they can do it, because they don't want to have that.
No, it would be boring, and I think that even when Georgia played Alabama again last year, the ratings weren't fantastic.
Yeah,
they weren't great.
Yeah, so it was sort of
like
that. It was just like they already beat them. Why did they have to beat them again? And because they got injury in the second matchup, they lost. Yep. I mean, it's just BS. Like, I'm no Alabama fan, but I would just be super annoyed that they beat them fair and square. Then their star got hurt, and then they ended up losing. Yeah. So it's just they shouldn't have had to beat them twice.
Well, I can say this: I don't think we're going to see 2 Big Ten teams in there. I mean, something drastic would have to happen with TCU, with the Pac-12. There would have to be someone with 2 losses in the Pac-12 that won the championship. I think it's out. There's going to be Michigan or Ohio State in there.
Do you think a close loss, and let's say USC loses, let's say TCU loses, which both of those things are very likely, and then we have, let's say, Georgia, the winner of Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee. So those 3 are in, right? So is the fourth team, is this going to be a 1-loss TCU? No. A 1-loss or 2-loss USC? No. Mm-mm. They're going to go with the loser of our game.
I mean, that would be nice.
So basically, if you want to be safe, you want to be rooting for a TCU loss and another USC loss, then you're pretty much in no matter what.
Could you imagine if it worked out that Michigan and Ohio State had to play twice this year?
That would be.
Have you even entertained that thought?
That would be.
I barely entertained it.
Losing that game twice in 1 year. How awful would it be?
Oh, the stress level is enough.
Yeah, it would be pretty brutal.
I agree. Does someone have a sneeze?
I think she's trying to annoy me and interrupt.
I think so.
But that's what women do.
I love Michigan more than Ohio State.
Ooh. They're rebelling against you. You pushed a little too hard. You pushed a little too hard raising your daughter. That happened to me too. My son, big Ohio State fan. As soon as Ohio State started winning, he switched at about age 5, and so now it's pretty rough in this house. All right, let's talk about Michigan passing. Unfortunately, sadly, we have to talk about Michigan passing. So, question: do you think, from your standpoint as a Buckeye, is it Defcon 3 for Michigan in the passing game? Is it panic time for Michigan with JJ McCarthy's inability to push the ball down the field?
Yeah, I mean, I would be pretty worried, except for the fact that they haven't had to pass yet this year. And maybe they
Not
won't,
on this schedule.
maybe they won't have to pass at all. In that case, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they don't need to pass in the playoffs either.
Well, I know this. Against Ohio State last year, Cade McNamara had 2 deep passes in that game.
Yeah.
One in the second quarter and one in the third quarter. And they both went for touchdowns. And I think that they're going to need to be able to connect on them. And Cade McNamara, for his lack of explosive play, he could at least be accurate on a deep ball every once in a while. JJ is like just completely overthrows
He
them.
got hurt, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's out
Um,
for the season and then probably transferring if he's smart.
So who's your backup now?
I can't remember his name. It's someone who you don't ever want to play. It's Joe Heisman.
That's rough because
Yeah.
at least we have some like decent 5-star backups. I mean, obviously you don't want to ever lose your starter, but having Cade there would have been a nice backup because at least he can throw the ball sometimes.
At least a guy who can run the offense.
Yeah.
But I guess you never know. You never know who might be a star in the making.
Who do you have?
It's not going to happen.
Who does Michigan have that's healthy and can make big plays besides Corum?
They have Donovan Edwards. He's really good at being a receiver. I think he might actually be a better receiver than he is a running back.
So does he play at the same time as Corum ever?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Occasionally, but they've been so blah with their play calling, purposely. I think. I don't think they want to give Ohio State anything to look at.
Yeah, it seems like looking at the stats, it seems like really hit or miss. Like he sometimes has these games where he has 150 yards from scrimmage, and the next game he has 12 yards.
Yeah, it is hit or miss.
Listen.
But it you know what though? It was against the biggest game. It was in the biggest game of the year against Penn State. Both Corum and Edwards both had over 150 yards rushing.
Yeah.
And each had a really long rush. So I mean that's one thing too about these teams. Like, do they step it up during the big games? Are we going to see that? I hope so on the Michigan side because they're so boring to watch. It's like I tell myself a little joke every time like the game starts and Michigan goes on offense for the first time, like time to start running out the clock. I mean, that's what's going to happen against Ohio State too. Like as soon as they take the field on offense, they're going to start running out the clock. It's just such a funny thing. It's so opposite of Ohio State.
Do you think that your running offense has improved enough this year that you would be able to run against a team like Georgia?
Possibly. I don't know what happened last year against Ohio State because Hassan Haskins, the game before against Maryland, had 72 yards rushing before they played Ohio State. And so I don't know. It feels like Michigan can run on anyone with the offensive line. And because Corum's so good at just finding the hole, he's got great vision. He's got great burst and speed. Home run speed's not like there completely, but he is shifty, really shifty. And he gets out there and he can still usually outrun most DBs. So I think they would have a much better chance against Georgia this year because of what Georgia lost last year. That's for sure.
Defense is even better this year than last year.
Georgia's?
Yeah.
Maybe it is, yeah. But I think Michigan was in a hilarious situation last year when they played Georgia. It was like the opposite of having all of the intangibles on your side because Michigan showed up like kind of bouncy and happy, just happy to be there. Smiles on their face. I noticed at the coin toss, I watched it. Like Michigan is like, they're like little butterflies coming out there all happy and giddy. And they come out there and the Georgia guys coming out there are pissed. Like they're focused and they just walk out. They look pissed. I mean, they do fist bump and shake hands and everything. But I looked at that and I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be good. I could tell right from there, like Georgia was pissed because they had just lost to Alabama. They had just made the playoffs and they're ranked number 4. And yeah, it wasn't going to be good. And the worst part about that game, Georgia versus Michigan in the game, was Michigan's defense. We couldn't stop their offense. They went right down the field on us almost every single play, every single drive of the game. It was awful.
Yeah, that was a surprising thing for me because you had a good defense last year, I thought. And
Yeah. I mean, the 2 first-round picks on the defensive ends didn't show up at all. I mean, they were just outgamed. So I think Michigan would respond a little better this year because they weren't used to being there last year.
yeah, I mean, the experience definitely helps.
Awesome. So yes, you're agreeing that it is Defcon 3 for Michigan in the passing game and JJ McCarthy because I think it is.
Unless this is like a generational run game. Do you think it's a generational run game that can just run over everybody and it won't matter?
It might be. We'll have to see. Ohio State really hasn't played any really great rushing offenses, right? I mean, I can't think of any.
Braylon Edwards, the guy you're trying to steal.
Braylon Allen.
Braylon Allen, yeah.
The guy trying to swipe.
To steal from Wisconsin.
I guess. He's a good running back. I don't think Wisconsin has a great line. But, I mean, it's not Ohio State's fault for not playing a good running team. Michigan hasn't either. We can't help it. Who we play, essentially.
Well, Penn State's pretty good. I mean, they're pretty solid running.
Very solid running backs, not solid offensive line.
Yeah.
So that's their problem. But yeah, their running backs are awesome. They might be great next year. All right. So next question. What is your injury concern level for both teams? Go ahead and start with the Buckeyes. I guess that could be a DEFCON 3 question too. Okay. What's your injury concern at this point? Is this going to affect the game?
From listening to so Ryan Day normally doesn't give any details on injuries at all. And for some reason, this last interview this week, he was giving detailed injury assessments and predictions, which he never normally does. So I don't know what's going on with him. He's normally the absolute worst. And, it sounds like almost everyone is back. And I mean, even JSN might even allegedly play, 20 snaps this week against Maryland. So if he's back, I mean, that's like the main thing. So I don't think we need JSN to get to the playoffs, but I think we would need him probably if we're going to beat Georgia. I think we would need him. I don't know. I don't think our other receivers are good enough. I think that if a good defense can bracket Marvin, I mean, I don't know if they can even stop Marvin, but I think you need more than just one guy on to be able to catch passes. I think we need someone else. And so if we had JSN, I think we would pretty much be unstoppable. Without him, it's going to be much more difficult, and Georgia just has looked so much better than everyone else for the majority of the year, outside of a couple close games.
Yeah, if I put myself in the Buckeye shoes, of a Buckeye fan's shoes, I'm thinking I'm really not worried about the passing game at all. The receivers are plenty good. Plus your tight end now.
Yeah.
I don't think you need JSN at all, to be honest.
Against Georgia, I think we might.
Georgia, maybe. But, I mean, for this game in a week and a half.
I'm not talking about
okay, gotcha. Yeah, this is just for the Michigan game. But, yeah, for Georgia, too. I mean, I know what you mean by, Georgia.
It would be really nice if Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson are both healthy for the Michigan game. But as long as we can get one of those guys, preferably Mayan, because I think he's the better of the two. But as long as we can have at least one of those, then we'll at least be somewhat balanced.
Yeah, I think that for Buckeyes, I would be most concerned about your running game, and that coupled with the questionable middle of the offensive line run blocking. Yeah. And then you've got 2 injured running backs or semi-injured, just dinged up.
So we have several.
Yeah, it could be. I think that might be the biggest issue. But
the backup,
Ohio State can pass their way out of things.
Yeah,
they don't necessarily need the running game. They can still be highly effective with just the pass.
I was so impressed with the backups. So I couldn't believe how good they looked. I was like, do we even need this? I mean, it was I guess
it was Indiana.
Maybe it doesn't even matter who you throw out there. It just reminds me. I think Lydell Ross ran for over 100 yards against Indiana once.
Lydell Ross and Hall. I remember those guys. Fond memories. But yeah, it was Indiana. Indiana is bottom of the barrel in rush defense. I think they're third to the last. I think they used to be first to the last, but I think Northwestern is actually the absolute worst rushing rushing defense in the entire league. But yeah, and as far as Michigan goes, injury-wise, I think we're going to get everyone back pretty healthy. We've got the tight end, we've got our defensive end, but they're not serious injuries. No one was carted off the field like Mayan Williams. I guess I would say that. If a guy gets carted off the field, that's never good. But maybe it wasn't as bad as, the cart scene really made it look.
That's the second time he was taken off, not with a cart, but he had another injury that looked really bad. And then he was down for a while and everything, and we thought it was serious. It's like it was the one where he broke like 2 fingers, and then it looked like he had his arm in a sling. So he had 2 broken fingers, arm in a sling, and then he played the next week, no problem. The guy is just ridiculous. He's like
a full body cast 1 week.
Yeah, he's like Bruce Willis in Unbreakable.
That's too funny. All right. That was a good show. I think we should probably wrap it up here. Got through a lot of topics. I'm looking forward to seeing the rankings tonight come out. I don't think we're going to see much of a change at the top because not much happened. But it'll still be interesting to see maybe what happens in the bottom, maybe the bottom 10.
Yeah.
And yeah. Good
All right.
to go.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
We will chat again after the rankings come out. Maybe make another prediction video before the next game on
Maybe if you can control your kids.
That's impossible.
You tie them up, do something. Or sit them down and let them give their opinions. That would be even better. All right. Yeah, thanks. Have a good one. Take care, everyone.
Go Bucks.
Go Blue.